Okay, we're back.
Hey, what up?
Urian Hackney, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being on this, man. I appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Is the sound coming through good on your side?
Yeah, we're good to go. We're
Cool.
good to go. Ooh, I like that Neurosis poster. That's a good one.
Yeah. I got a
Yeah,
neurosis
so
shirt too.
just flying the flag today. Okay.
Yeah. I totally didn't even think twice about it. But
I love it. For anyone who doesn't know, Urian Hackney plays in the band Rough Francis, also a very cool engineer. You also might have seen him filling in for Converge on drums when Ben had his injury. Incredible drummer, awesome band, Rough Francis, and such a crazy backstory that I found out about when I was talking to you to Kurt actually, and he's like, you know Death, right? And I'm like, yeah, I love Death. He's like, no, the other Death. I'm like, what do you mean the other Death? And then I got clued into this crazy thing and this documentary and all this stuff. So I would love to. I mean, you're gonna, you can speak on this much better than me. But can you give the people a short little bio about how you came up and discovering your father's thing and just the punk band before punk like existed? I loved the story when I heard it. So I'll
yeah,
let you take the stage for this one.
yeah, it's still a new story. It's definitely still like a new thing. It's fucking crazy. But so essentially, um, my family's from Detroit, and they moved up from Detroit to Vermont. But um, in their time when they were, coming of age in Detroit, they were in a rock and roll band or a punk band, I guess you'd call now. And it was like around the height of the Motown era, and it was three brothers, my dad and his two brothers, and they started a rock and roll band in their bedroom, and essentially, like, given the time period and the style of the way that they play their instruments, you'd listen to it now and consider it punk. And basically, they had a lot of trouble based on the name of the band, them being three black dudes in Detroit, not playing soul, not playing funk. They had a potential record deal with Columbia Records, and that got shot down based on the fact that their name was called Death. It was like, post Vietnam War, and just like there were just a lot of variables that didn't add up on their side, and basically, like, they kind of brushed it to the side because it was a story of them failing. So, me and my two brothers, we also grew, like, growing up in Vermont. We went to a venue called 242 Main, which is like, growing up black, to just to start off, like, in Vermont, like skateboarding and punk were the things where we're like, okay, this is a place where we can feel comfortable doing whatever we're going to do, being who we are. And so we kind of naturally got into, like, punk rock, into the hardcore scene pretty early on. And my dad was in a reggae band like years after he was in Death that we had no idea about. And from him exposing us to the reggae scene and, like, live music, we naturally got into punk. So fast forward, I'm skipping a lot of stuff, a lot of steps. But my brother Jules, like, once we were in, like, this band called Punch Out, this hardcore band back in the day. And then as time went on, like, we, like, kind of went our own direction because I was the youngest of the crew. And my brother Bobby was playing in a band called the Static Age, who actually recorded with Kurt at the first installment of God City back in the day. And then Jules went on to this other, a bunch of other bands, and I, like, got into, like, pop punk or whatever. And basically, he took a trip to California with his friend Nick Mitchell. Like, he was basically backpacked across the country on a train. And yeah, I've lost myself coming of age.
Sure, a little soul searching. That's cool.
Yeah, and he landed in San Francisco with his friend Nick Welch. He's also a good friend of ours too, and designed, like, the Rough Francis Panther logo. And they were busking around, like, they made friends with some certain people, and they started to, like, get intertwined with the community. And they came across a tape collecting and like tape sharing party, and basically like they were going around like sharing rare demo tapes from like Wipers and like just all these like obscure proto punk bands. And Jules, someone put a tape on. I was like, "Yo, check this out, man!" And it was like, this music comes on, and Jules like his first like instinct was like, "Shit, that's my dad. But that's like that sounds like a voice that I know." And he approached the person, was like, "Hey, like what is this? Like what band is this?" And like, "Oh yeah, this band called Death. They're from Detroit." And he's like, "What the fuck?" So basically goes on to the internet and finds like a rare mixtape of like these this like archive of like underground bands. And he's like, "All right, Death, Detroit, Hackney, huh? Because that's our last name." He was like, "Huh, I wonder if like Dad knows who these guys are, or like I wonder, So he calls. I remember the day this was left out of the documentary. I was way young and just like a little perplexed by like cameras and shit back then, so I didn't really get to say too much. But I remember the day that he called, because it was like the hottest day. Like Vermont, like granted we're in the far northeast. It's fucking hot up here. It gets really hot in the summertime, and it was like 98 degrees, like 70% humidity or whatever. And I hear my dad like yep, that was us. Yep, yeah. Like, on the phone on the other side. Like, "Yeah, I know, man. I didn't tell you." And I was like, "What the fuck is he talking about?" And then like after the phone call, so like I grew up in a duplex, so my uncle lived downstairs, my dad lives upstairs, or my family lives upstairs. And next to that, there's like a project studio that he built. That was like, he had like lots of reggae legends in there, like Augustus Pablo, Mikey Dread. Like that's kind of like the Vermont little dub spot. And I could hear his monitor speakers through the wall, like while I'm using the bathroom. And I've never heard him listen to punk before, like on his own, like unless we're like, "Hey, Dad," like, so yeah, man, get that Gorilla Biscuits off and go more the line. But he like was listening to the record that they cut, like the masters, like the master reel on like just like a regular 2-track. And so the speed wasn't correct. It wasn't, I think it was like cut at like 15 IPS, and it was like the speed wasn't correct. So it was just fast.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like kind of like I was like I don't know how to express how I felt, but it was like somewhere between like surprised, pissed, because like there was just so much going on. And I was like, "Dad, what are you listening to down there?"
So then this thing like snowballed. So how did it so who picked up on, like, did you guys take this like public, or like how did it become like
Rough Francis started as like a basically like we were like preaching the word of this music, like, holy shit, we have to fucking show the world that this band exists. And Rough Francis was the name of my Uncle Dave, who passed away in 2000 from leukemia. He was kind of like he was like the visionary for the band. He was like the one that like made it clear the name of the band. Like he was very, very, very adamant about like every direction of the band, like the soul seeker for the band.
Sure. I mean, there's a really defined like protest message in the music too. I mean, like that Politicians in My Eyes song and stuff, like they were like protesting the war at the time. And this was
that's a lot of stuff that would go against like a record label's standards back then too. Like, 3 black dudes talking about war in their music with a name called Death. Like, and it actually, it got to the point where like they were in the room of Columbia Records, and my Uncle Dave put his foot up on Clive Davis's desk and lit up a joint and told him to go to hell. Because he was they turned down like a $20,000 record deal, and at the time that's like a pretty substantial amount.
Wow, man. And so it's awesome that you and your brothers like have carried the legacy of this band. If you're listening to this, go look up the Death Midwest Punk Band. find this documentary, watch it. I mean, you literally have the Ramones and like Rollins and all these dudes on this thing that are just like, I mean, I think I saw Rollins in like that teaser. He's like, this is the reason why you go to record stores, like to find like this. I'm like, this is crazy. And and you guys, so you are like the second generation of this band, and you've done some pretty cool stuff. I mean, the last record is awesome. And like you've been able to play different punk and hardcore shows, and you've even like toured with Mos Def, right?
Well, we played, so like with the Mos Def thing, I don't know who wrote that article, but he played.
Yeah, I was reading it. I was like, you would have told me this. Like, I'm like, this is crazy.
Yeah, he played a show, like we played a show together up at Burlington at Higher Ground, and kind of like started this relationship.
Yeah.
Actually, he came up with Damon Dash, which is really funny. And he, like, after the show, like came to our house, like the house that I grew up in, to talk to my dad at like midnight, which is really funny.
Wow.
And there was like this whole article on XL magazine. I was like, Mos Def is gonna do a documentary and blah 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 blah, and like that kind of like that never happened. But yeah, we didn't actually tour with Mos Def. It was just a show.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, still pretty fun to do. But I wanted to ask, like, why didn't your dad ever tell you about this? Like, do you think, I'm sure, I mean, I can't imagine, being in that position in the 70s, being three Black artists, like fully outspoken against the government and protesting and stuff. But it's like, was he trying to protect you from that route? Or, I mean, he knew you were into punk rock. He knew you understood underground culture. Like, and he still, like, he kept it on the down low, and you had to find it yourself.
There's a little bit of like, so it has two sides as far as like the way this all came about, because like we'd be like, the first record that I ever listened to and that I really got into and bought for myself was the Minor Threat discography. That's the first thing. So like, I'd be listening to that, listening to like all the like SSD Control and all these other punk bands, just discovering through, Soul Seek and Real Player and all that shit.
Awesome. And Soul Seek, yeah.
Yeah, I know, right? Soul Seek was the best.
But, shout out to Soul Seek. Found a lot of music on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to GeoCities. But he would come up and be like, yeah, me and your uncles, we used to play in a band like that. Cause like, we knew him as a reggae musician, like we knew that he was in the Grand Funk Railroad and saw the Stooges and stuff. Actually, I didn't know about the Stooges. Like, I didn't know about his stoogedom until later. But
crazy. So, like, I'd be so mad. I'd be like, I want to know all this now, But I mean,
he'd tell us like all like he'd sneak in little things like, yeah, we used to listen to music like that. I'm like, yeah, yeah, right. And then like ground us for going to a show and seeing like Bury Your Dad at 242 or something like that,
Insane. Like, it blew my mind, and I think it's awesome that you guys like carry the message of the band and like do this as like a second generation thing. And the last record is fucking awesome, man.
Thanks, man.
So what else is going on with you? Like, I know, you're in Vermont now. I don't see anything about Vermont on the news or anything like that. It is. I wouldn't call it a hotbed for racial tension currently, at least. But what is the climate like in Vermont? Like, how are you holding up there and everything?
It's good. It's definitely like the thing about Vermont is that it's the racism is very, very it's very silent. It's in a way where it's like. To give you an example, like you'll see someone and then they'll have like this idea of who you are. And then like, basic, it's a lot of back patting, but the friends that I have are really like, they're super cool. It's a pretty progressive place that I live in, Burlington. It's like the college town, but just like the climate, it's interesting, man. It's really interesting. Cause like, I feel the weight. I feel like I feel the weight of the whole country where I am. But then I go out and it's like business as usual, like because there's not too many Black people here. Besides, like, there's my family who I hang out with, which is all Black, prominently. But it's interesting. It's just an interesting place to be during all this. Yeah,
I mean, Burlington is definitely more of a progressive city, and like it is like an open-minded place, and there's a lot of like, I feel like it's like a round two of Woodstock, that just
yeah. Ben and Jerry's is right around the corner.
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome that you've like found a comfortable place where you don't really have to, deal with what's going on in the world today. Do you still have family back in Detroit?
Yeah, I do. So like, because growing up, like my family, we used to go back and forth to Detroit every year. So I have like a pretty broad understanding of both sides, and yeah, it's interesting here. Like Winooski is more, it's like kind of like the Brooklyn of Vermont, which is like where there's more diverse, more diversity happening for sure. But yeah, it's definitely it's interesting, man. It's interesting. I definitely still there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, a lot. But yeah.
Yeah, talk to me about that a little bit, like from a culture which is like, when I go to Vermont, I'm like, oh, everybody loves each other. It feels very like hippie and welcoming and stuff. But you're saying that no, there is still work that needs to be done. Like,
yeah,
I'm curious about that. Like, what, to my perception, which is definitely not yours, I go there. I'm like, oh, how could there even be racism here? Everyone's so nice. It's such a like loving community. Ben and Jerry's just said, fuck white supremacy on their ice cream. Like, it's a beautiful place, but I don't have the perspective you have. So like, what can be done in places like that? Cause that's on a surface. I'm not like, fuck the people of Burlington. They need to do more. Like, I don't see it, And so
like the presence of the Black people that are here, just like, it's interesting because like so what I experience a lot is a lot of reverse racism, and direct racism, but like the reverse stuff is like, so the whole point of all of the movement is to like get Black people to experience life as the same as our white peers or whatever, just to like baseline, just have
just equality across the board. Sure. Yeah.
Across the board. So like here, some crazy shit will happen that apparently, like, it's like, oh my God, this never happens. Like something that happens all the time gets filmed. And then it's like, oh my God, people are scrambling to like find the most woke way to like, to approach it. And then like, what it is what I experience is like from before, it's like, I'm treated like, below a certain level. And then all of a sudden I'm a deity when I walk out. It's like, oh my God, what can I do? Here's my shoes. Like, and it's cool, but like, it gets to a certain point, like, how can I drop from being treated like, like out of like the expectation of looking good to the public,
Sure. I mean, the reverse racism how you mentioned, it's interesting because it's not it's subtly, and in the minds of the people, they want to support you, but you don't want to be put. You're a normal human being. You just want to be treated normal and equal.
I've had I've not too long ago, like, back when we could play shows, but I was like loading out from a venue, and this dude was like basically policing the street, like not a police officer, and was just like, hey, what are you doing parked here? This is a cab spot. I'm like, dude, fuck you. And he's like, oh, what do you talk about, nigger? So like, I grabbed my board, like, trucks in hand, like ready to fucking truck fuck him. But like it was almost like, I almost see that on the same plane as like the reverse racism, because then like these people are starting to use you as a pawn for their own self-gain rather than like a human being with feelings and with like, that you have to earn respect from,
Yeah. And I think, it's definitely a conversation to have with people. It's like, hey, definitely support this Black Lives Matter movement.
And it's amazing.
Try to treat people as equal and not as like, don't make them feel uncomfortable by being, put on this like unnecessary pedestal, you know, where they just want to be like you, and they just want the equal rights that you have. And
that's exactly. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's the exact reason why I got into punk and hardcore. Like, because you know, a lot of the time growing up and like going to school, like I'd be wearing like, you know, Bad Brains and Bad Religion shirts, and it's like, dude, why are you so white? You're acting so white. And then, like, you know, at the same time, like, I was one of maybe 3 black people in my school growing up. So, like, there wasn't much camaraderie or understanding that, like, saying something like that to someone is, like, it's deeply fucked up. So, like, you know, getting intertwined with the hardcore scene and getting, like, into skateboarding, that was, like, the one place where it was like, all right, dude, if you're skating, just don't push Mongo. Like,
yeah,
you know, like if you're at a show, just like, you know, make sure to like take care of people, and like we're all singing the same lyrics, you know.
Yeah. So. Well, I appreciate your perspective on all this, because I think, man, you're a wildly awesome person with such a cool story, and the way you've like been against the grain the whole time, and then discovered your family was the whole time. And I mean, I don't know, it's just this awesome, inspiring thing that you're doing, man. And I really appreciate you coming on here and sharing a lot of this with me. I definitely would love to talk to you all day, but I got to keep her moving too. So let me show your giveaway real quick. You dug really deep for this one too, so I appreciate it. This is your personal Vistalite snare drum from the 70s, right?
Yeah.
So through this snare, we could say, I mean, punk rock was the DNA of the invention of punk rock. Might have been, whacked in the snare drum at some point.
It's a player's snare. There's definitely some lugs that have been changed out because Ludwig. I don't know the Ludwig lugs on those things.
Yeah, we got a Vistalite. I've dealt with it too. So
yeah.
Still recorded all the time. It's a very useful snare drum. Comes with the good heads. It's there's a live snare that kicks ass. It's good in the studio, but awesome giveaway, man. Soundring.live. A $10 donation enters you in the raffle. Make a note of what you'd like to win, and if we pick your name, you get it.
Also, Urian, before you sign off, there may or may not, because the snare drum is a perfect size for a record to sit on top. So there may or may not be a first pressing death record on top too. So.
Oh, damn! You should have dropped that earlier. I love that. Yes.
Yeah. I didn't have, I'm bad with the, time stuff.
Oh man, how many of those you got? You got PayPal? I might hit you. I might hit you for one later.
I got 2.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Dude, big giveaway, man. I really appreciate you coming on here, and you're fucking awesome, man. We'll talk soon. Urian Hackney, man. Thank you, dude.
Well, take it easy, man.
All right, have a good one.
You too.
Urian Hackney, win this snare drum. And a first press of the Death record, which is maybe the first punk rock record that's ever been made. Soundring.live. No breaks. We're going right to Mark Lewis. Give me 30 seconds. Technically, that's a break, but I have to click a few things. So, just deal with it. All right, I'm having a long day here.